Well, with me to discuss Senator McCain's work fighting for human rights in Vietnam, I'm joined from our Washington studio by Huy Trinh. He's the executive director of Voice. That's a non-profit organisation that works for the protection of Vietnamese refugees and also for democracy in Vietnam. A very warm welcome to Newsday. It's good to have you with us. Just explain for us how John McCain used his position and his influence to help the Vietnamese people.
Hello, Ben, and hello to everyone. I think that Senator John McCain not just helped Vietnamese refugees, but later in his life, he helped a lot of the human rights defenders in Vietnam. If I may hold this letter to the camera, and then if I may just read two sentences from his letter that he co-wrote with Senator Ted Kennedy at the time, 15 years ago, when I first contacted both of the senators to support the work that I was doing in helping to resettle the last Vietnamese boat people in the Philippines. It reads, "Our nation has a continuing obligation as part of our history and heritage to maintain a strong refugee resettlement program for needy groups, and that obligation is especially strong for refugees from Vietnam." It speaks volume of Senator John McCain's help in resettling not just the last group of Vietnamese boat people. 2,000 of them got resettled right after the letter was written. But also over 300,000 Vietnamese servicemen, South Vietnamese servicemen and their families were able to resettle in the U.S. Between 1990 and 95, right before the normalization of the diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Vietnam. So not just Vietnamese refugees.
I just wonder what your thoughts are on his experience, having been a prisoner of war, having been tortured by the North Vietnamese over 5.5 years during his time in detention there. How do you think that shaped his work in later life?
Well, it shaped, I think, a lot. He is one of the most frequent visitors to Vietnam. I remember back in 2000, 25 years after the fall of Saigon, he went to Vietnam, he visited Hoa Lo prison, and then he spoke to the journalist, and he said, you know what, the wrong guys want the war. And they robbed the best people through thousands of people fleeing by boat, and they sent hundreds of thousands of people to the re-education camps. So he knew that as a politician, he needed to push for the normalization of diplomatic relations. But at the same time, he needed to support the vulnerable and the courageous of Vietnam. So every time he went back to Vietnam, he would take time to meet up with civil society leaders. And I remember 2 years ago, we brought the wife of the then imprisoned human rights attorney Nguyen Van Dai. Her name is Vũ Minh Khánh. We brought her to DC, and you have a photo with you there, seeing that he took a photo with her and he pushed for his release. And last but not least, as late as 6 months ago, you know, he was having brain cancer, but he pushed for the resettlement of the most famous songwriter from Vietnam, who spent 4 years in jail.
Yes.
And then he was able to bring him to America.
OK, Huy Trinh, we could talk at great length, but I'm afraid we're out of time. Thanks very much for sharing your memories and thoughts with us. Huy Trinh there, joining us from Washington.